We go. Right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this noon event with the amazing Dr. Denise Taylor talking about her new book, ThriveSpan. I'm Eleanor Mills, the founder of Noon, and I've been really interested to and keen to talk to Denise about this for a while because I think that she has a very different kind of take on things to do with getting older than many. I really like the fact that you're not banging on about kind of achievement in the way that so many other people are. Yeah. We're not talking here about kind of going on being, a kind of super productive or kind of achieving or having to go on striving into our retirement, which I think is a really welcome and necessary conversation. So, Denise, tell us a bit about your amazing new book, ThriveSpan.
Okay. Well, I'm always saying it was 7 years in the writing because I started it before I started my doctorate, and I started my doctorate 2020, 2019, something like that, at the end of 2019. And I thought I could do both. Clearly, I could not write a book and do my doctorate. And what has always interested me is later life. I started doing pre-retirement seminars when I was 27. So it's really been a 40-year journey through helping people with later life. And clearly there's a lot about finance, but also there's so much about, you got to keep striving. It's all about purpose. You know, if you've not got some big goal, some big purpose, life's not worth living. And the beauty of doing my doctoral research was I could look into things that were going beyond my thesis that was quite contained, and continue to explore it. So that's why the book took a while to come out. And I pulled it together last year in my wood. Literally, I was writing it in the wood, which is why there's lots of woodland analogies going through it.
I love this idea of you being in your wood. Can you tell us a bit more about that? Is that actually like a kind of physical wood, not a metaphorical one?
It's a physical wood. 7 years. It's 7 years ago when I went for my interview to do a doctorate at Birkbeck. And as I'm interviewed, I'm saying, well, I haven't studied since my MBA, which was like 30 years beforehand. And I didn't think they were going to sort of take me on because they had lots of applications in 7 places or 8 places maybe. And then they said, so what are you going to do this weekend? And I go like, I'm going off on a vision quest. And it's like, what's a vision quest? And that's it's a rite of passage where you're prepared, and then you do 4 days and 4 nights on your own, out in nature, no food, no tent. I mean, you can have a tarp and you can have water, but you know, it's a really way to immerse yourself into paying attention to nature. And previously, like lots of other people, you know, you go walking in the countryside, and sometimes it's just like, how fast can you go? And like, can I climb up that hill without stopping and stuff? But this was slowing down to watch an ant crawl up a blade of grass and to notice the way that the wind moves trees in different ways. And it was the following year I started thinking about, I could buy a wood, and started looking. You see signs across the road, signs saying woods for sale, and they buy big woods and divide them into smaller plots. And I started off looking out in Wales because it's cheaper, but it's 3 hours. Why am I going to drive 3 hours to go to a wood? And I was so lucky because this one's 15 miles from where I live in Cheltenham. So I get there in about half an hour, unless there's bad traffic. And so I've had it now for over 5 years. And it's just become just like another part of who I am. So I live in town and can do all the stuff that you get through living in town. And then I head off to the wood and I really, really slow down. And it just inspires me so much.
You write in your new book about the importance of finding a new rhythm as we get kind of further into midlife. And so how has the wood kind of enabled that rhythm? I thought that was a really interesting concept.
Yeah.
A lot of people kind of retire and they feel that they've got this kind of aching like space that they have to fill. And I love what you say about we're so used to being kind of scheduled or feeling like we have to achieve. And actually what I think the wood allowed you to do was to find a more kind of natural rhythm. You write a lot in the book about the kind of seasons and realizing we have to kind of really kind of graduate our energy, or kind of suit our energy to how we are now. Do you want to talk a bit about that and finding a new rhythm? Because I think that that's really, really crucial to what you're talking about in the book.
So both what I knew from all the work I've done in the past and what I knew through my academic research was the first 2 years of retirement is a very fluid state. That's not how it's going to be. People are finding themselves. And it's either, and I'm having my kitchen redone at the moment. And one of the kitchen fitters was saying about when his dad or his dad's brother retired. And at that point, he just sat on the sofa and started watching telly and basically gave up on life. But I can't remember if he was a kitchen fitter, but he'd had a manual hard job, and I think he was probably ready for a rest. So you've got people doing that. So this is when I've just lost my train of thought slightly. But I think finding your rhythm is.
We're talking about the kind of rhythm of the wood, and new rhythm being required when we get out of the kind of straitjacket of kind of working life.
So I think it's often people have the holidays, and then it's like, but let's just see who I am. And that's why the subtitle to my book is Walking Gently into What Matters Now, rather than bombing ahead and not really looking at everything. Because if you slow down, you're experiencing things. And lots of people have said what matters now, because otherwise people start talking about purpose and they feel it's got to be this big thing. So I've got to go get another job. I've got to start my own business because I need a purpose. Whereas, do you? I mean, just talking to people as you sit on benches is a purpose. Whereas if you think about what matters now, and it's, what matters now is actually slowing down a bit and actually taking time to appreciate what I'm doing before I move on to something else. It doesn't have to be doing everything at speed. And it might be that, you've got a relative who's suffering some illness, or you just want to spend more time caring for younger family members. So that might be what matters. And I think when you start thinking about what matters, you slow down, because you're thinking, what is important to me now? And so for me, every time I go to the wood, I slow down. I mean, there's a bit at the start of the book about, getting out of the car and just starting and just breathing and listening. And I think that's really important. If we do that, and some people clearly would do that through meditation. For me, nature is the way I meditate, I guess, just by slowly. So I think that's one of the things. It's about slowing down, but in the way that's right for you. And if you can't slow down like that, but maybe you can slow your mind down, because that's the other thing with my book. It's not prescriptive. It's not 5 steps to retirement happiness or 5 steps. It's like, but everybody's different, and you change. What might be right for you now might not be right for you later. And people are different ages. And, I'll be 69 in 6 weeks' time. And I'm a different person now than I was at 60. Well, than I was at 68, a year ago. And I was at 65, etc. So when people, and I read a lot on LinkedIn, and they go like, I'm never going to retire. And you look at how old they are, like 58 or 61. You think but that's what I used to say. At 67, I would used to say, I'm just going to work until my brain stops. And then something hit me. Whereas, do I really want to waste all these years and just work? And then my hip goes and my knee goes and my partner's dead and all that sort of thing. And it's like, I could have done, I never wanted to reach that point of regret that you look back and you think I wasted my best years, when the kids have gone and stuff.
No, I think it's really true. I think that there's a kind of, I think it was interesting you're talking about purpose, because I think a lot of people get a kind of purpose anxiety if they don't suddenly find a kind of whole massive new kind of passion project as they retire. And I think that you're right to locate purpose in more accessible things, like maybe spending some time in nature, or kind of buying wood. I mean, that's actually not a kind of a big massive thing to do. And I think that we're in danger, and there are a lot of new books around, aren't there, around longevity at the moment. Michael Clinton's new book, I was thinking of Lindsay Simpson's thing about the age rebellion, and she just seems to assume that everybody wants to kind of go on working forever in a kind of frantic way. And I think it's very important that there are different paths to what this later stage look like, and that people feel that they have a choice. And I think that that's where your ThriveSpan book is really good, because I think it asks people to ask themselves some really interesting questions. Do you want to run us through some of the kind of, I've got some here which I'd like to kind of ask you about, but do you want to talk to us a bit about some of the questions that you think it's important to ask people as they think about the different kind of paths they might take through their kind of later life wood?
Well, one of the things I want to say is, because I'd written a book that came out in October last year, which was Career Coaching for Midlife and Beyond, which was very much a traditional book with lots of activities, boxed out and do this. And I was really clear. I wasn't going to do that at all. What I was going to do was to give what I call gentle reflections. So I think it's less about me saying, these are the questions, and more about sitting with it. And the way the book starts, actually, do you want me to just read out a bit at the beginning about, should I just read out a section? Because every time
read us some from the beginning, and I've got some questions I want to share too. But yes, read us the beginning.
Yeah, so this is right at the beginning, before the book properly starts, and it's called A Quiet Threshold. And this I wrote after going to the wood every day, or every time I went to the wood, and realizing that this is how I am. Before you begin, take a moment, not to plan, not to analyze, just to arrive. Pause, breathe, notice. You don't need to know what you're looking for yet. You don't need a 5-year vision or a dazzling reinvention. You're allowed to begin exactly as you are. Later life is not a single shift, it's a new landscape. And the first step is simply noticing where you are. What do you feel in this moment? What is asking to be released? What parts of you long to be seen, remembered, or reawakened? This book is not a map to follow. It's a space to reflect, a way of giving language to what you are already sensing, a quiet companion for exploring who you are now and who you are becoming. Let this be your invitation to pause, to breathe, to begin again with intention rather than urgency. And I think that really sets it up. You don't have to rush through. And the book is written as, to begin with, it was going to be 3 sections, and then I made them paths. And then each in chapters, now I don't want a word chapter, so they become glades. So you go down, so you arrive, and it's like, which path do I want to go down? Do you want to go self and well-being? Or do I want to go about connection and contribution? Or do I want to go exploration and fulfillment? And basically you go along a path and go, oh, autonomy and agency. Oh, I'll have a wander there. No, not today. Let me go back. Oh, let's go down the next path, and there's belonging. Oh, yeah. Let me go and get a chair or get a bench or lie on the grass and just think about belonging. So it's a book you can dip into. It's not that you have to follow it, from start to finish. I purposely wrote it like that. And I have little interludes in between as well, just as like the advert break, which is similar but different, just to, and they came to me when something fell on my head out of a tree, and was it an acorn? I don't know what it was. But anyway, as I moved it, and I go like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have little pauses? So again, it's how the wood inspired me to write these different things.
I love that. And some of the things that really struck me actually were when you talk about it being okay to be in a fog. It's one of the things that we talk about a lot at Noon, is that kind of period of not knowing, the kind of feeling a bit lost in the fog, hanging on the hook in the dark, kind of while you regenerate. And I think that I've read a lot of books about longevity, but I think that ThriveSpan is particularly good about not kind of telling people not to panic if they don't know immediately what their next way forward is. And I liked some of your kind of your suggestions about, what is the emotional tone of today? What thoughts or tensions are below the surface, or unstructured time is where insight arises, creativity sits, where the soul breathes. So I think that whole kind of sense of kind of enoughness and allowing people to settle into what it is which actually brings them some sense of rest or creativity or purpose sounds bleedingly obvious, but it's actually, I think, quite radical in this space, which has been so much about doing and not about being. So do you want to kind of talk a bit about how you can encourage people into that sense of kind of being and some of the questions that they might ask themselves?
Yeah, well, can I just say about the whole longevity thing, because that just exhausts me, because I'm meant to be measuring everything and optimizing things and checking what I eat and what my macros are. And it's like, but I'm not an athlete. And writing the book, I actually, towards the end of the book, when it was going through the production process, I swapped personal trainers because she seemed to treat me like a 29-year-old, you know, and what's their personal best and what are my goals? I'm like, I just want to be able to get up off the floor, and I just want to be able to, you know, get something off the top shelf. You know, I'm not really bothered if I can keep on lifting heavier and heavier weights. So we sort of drifted apart. So I went back to somebody who was older. So we've got that side of things. And here's me. And so I think one of the things about people can often think about is something like joy. And joy, when I was writing it, it's like, does this bring me joy? Well, I've been the secretary of, you know, an organisation, you know, as a volunteer, and I thought about it, and I'm thinking, it doesn't actually bring me joy. I'm like, it's like a job. And I thought, if I was offered to be secretary now, or coerced into doing it, would I accept it? And it'd be like, no. And so I thought, well, it's not bringing me joy, so I resigned. And I didn't wait till the end of the quarter. It's like, you know what? I've had enough. I've got better things to do than get involved with the whole intricacies of, you know, how committees are and everything. And I thought that was just a beautiful example about joy. And I think that's a really useful thing for anybody watching this or reading the book to think about is, does it bring me joy? Yeah. Keep doing it? No. Well, just say, can it bring you joy, or let's get rid of it and think of something else. And then you think about creativity, because people are always like, I'm not very creative. And it's like, but play, because little children don't go like, well, I can't really do things. They slap the paint over, don't they? And they bring it home and you go like, it's beautiful. What is it? So I think it's giving ourselves permission to play, because we don't have to just be good at something, because we've spent a lifetime at work striving and being good and getting promoted. And it's like, sometimes it's thinking, you know what, I do this stuff and it's not very good, and does it really matter? No, because I'm just allowing my creative side to come out. I've started writing poetry, it's not very good, but I like just sort of being inspired and seeing how it goes. And I guess the more I write, the better it will get. But I'm not really bothered if it gets any better, to be honest.
I think that's interesting, though, because I think a lot of people carry into their later years a striving for perfection, or a sense of not being enough, or a kind of sense of lack. And I think you write about that rather well, about the rigidity of our definitions of success, and how maybe we can kind of shift those, or we can decide that actually we are enough. Do you want to talk a bit about how we can shift out of those kind of mindsets?
Well, I think when we start asking ourselves, how do we judge success? Well, it can be in a whole range of different things, can't it? And and many people that are buying my book are still, you know, they're not retired and stopped working. They're in a stage of, they're thinking about later life. And in fact, I've got a friend who's around the 30 mark, and she loves the book because it's getting her to think about things. So I think it's not just for people older. But I think if we start thinking about success measures, maybe it's about the feeling it gives us. And I think something that I've noticed, and talking to some other people they've noticed as well, is when you slow down, not slow down in a bad way, but just gently take your foot off the gas and work a bit slower, then you notice more and you notice people more. Personally, I'm having loads of really interesting conversations because people said I've just rushed on by. Whereas sometimes it's like, oh, that's a nice view. I'll sit on that bench. And while I was over in North Wales for a couple of weeks, I was having fantastic conversations with people that generally I wouldn't have. And I think that's quite nice, because I think the success can be, you know, back to belonging and community. It's about giving people time, because there's a lot of people, you know, as we know, nobody ever speaks to them really until they go to a shop. And so actually just taking a little bit of time, I think that can be a measure. So I think when we're thinking about what does success mean to us, it can be contentment, because I think if we just feel, I feel content, I feel enough. And I think feel enough doesn't necessarily mean I need to earn another X thousand pounds every month or day or whatever, year. You know, it can be, because if you keep striving for money, then that's driving you into a whole different sphere, isn't it? So if you think, I just want to feel more happy, I just want to feel more content, I just want to feel more alive, I just don't want to have that level of stress, then you make different choices.
I think this whole concept, though, of enoughness is quite a tricky one in a society which is all about kind of getting more, biggering, more consumption. So this is what I mean by, I think your book is actually really quite quietly radical, because I think it's actually encouraging quite a fundamental mind shift. I was at the big longevity show the other day, and that was all about kind of living longer, maximizing your VO2 max, kind of what, look at your cholesterol, have a different aura ring every day, do all these tests, go off and kind of put yourself in a cryogenic chamber. But the bigger question, I thought, was it's not living longer. It shouldn't just be an end in itself. It's like, well, what are we going to do with this time? What's the purpose of our days? How does it feel nourishing? And when I actually turned around and said to people, well, what's the point of all this kind of extra longevity? They were a bit stumped. And I think that's one of the things that you're answering. So what do you think the point is of, what should we be doing with these extra years that we're lucky enough to have been gifted?
Yeah, and of course not everybody does. So I've got a family member, and he's certainly not going to live, a long life. It's there's a sadness with things like that. So I think there's a lot of talk, isn't there? Basically, if there's 100-year life, we add all these extra years pretty much into work/study, and then go and do more work. So that sort of always makes me think, but they're having you work until you're 80, and by which point your hip's gone and your knee's gone, and goodness knows what. Whereas for me, these extra years are to enable you to be still contributing to society, but to contribute to society in a different way. And I spent some time with the Masai tribe, and I've done all this, wilderness rites of passage things, and the people that I meet through that, they're not striving to succeed. They're being the elders in the village, the people that are not necessarily seeing themselves as the wise elder, but certainly they're people that have lived life long and will take time to listen. And I think that's one of the things that's really useful. If we take time to listen to people who are lonely, but to younger people as well, who maybe don't have grandparents or whose family members, are not as supportive as they can be. Sometimes there's things like that we can do. So it's thinking about, but how can we contribute to society? And it doesn't have to be through work. It can be through volunteering. It can be just by being a member of your local community, in the area that you live, or involved in what you're producing, and I know people who have started to become, really focused on their writing, or really focused on their painting, or, different things. So we've got these extra years, but the loudest voice seems to be, we've got more years, so work hard. And I just think, no, there's another view. And I seem to keep on popping up when the whole scenario, the whole conversation is, just work more. Why don't you start a second business, have an encore career? And I just think it sounds exhausting. And it's like, do it if you want. Do it if you want, because I'm just offering people a choice. If you want to go there and start up another business and do 80-hour weeks or whatever, do it. And if you want to slob in front of the telly because you've had a hard life, do that as well. But consider it. So it's a buffet. And you choose what you want. And today at the buffet, for somebody, it's, I'm going to carry on working hard. And for me, it's, let's just go to the wood and take your notebook and see what you see. And for somebody else, it's like, I'm exhausted. And I have days now that I actually allow myself to be tired and just put my feet up and watch the tennis or the football or something. And I would never have allowed that in the past. So I'm giving myself permission that you don't have to work flat out, because that's something that I found in myself. When you're working at super speed, you just don't actually feel tired because you're just working on empty the whole time. Whereas now I've slowed down more. Sometimes I come back from the gym and it's like, no, I'm just going to sit and have a cup of tea on the balcony and read the book for a bit, rather than let's just see what emails I've got, because they can wait. So that's, I think, is a nice way of moving into later life.
I think it's so interesting though, isn't it, that we're suddenly getting such a sense of um, a real a real, almost like a kind of another set of to-do lists as we retire. All these books kind of saying, go on striving, go on, go on living more. How do we begin to start a more gentle conversation?
Okay. Well, first of all, it's giving yourself permission, because if you take yourself, what many people do is take themselves off on a holiday. I was at my book club yesterday afternoon, and several people, we were talking about Simon Armitage's book, Walking Home, or whatever it's called, and people saying, I'm going to do the Pennine Way, and I'm going to do the Cotswold Way and everything, and so that these are quite big things, and you've done the Camino, and sometimes it's things like that can take people, but it doesn't have to be this really active thing. You could decide, I'm going to take the summer, because that's what I did last year. I took at least 2 months off work. I just put the gone on holiday sign up and didn't take on any clients at all, just to give me time to think. So I think that's really useful for somebody to think, if you're reaching a point in your life and maybe you're not working at the moment, or you take some holiday, but you just think, I'm just going to take some time to be, and I'm not going to feel like pressurized I have to do something, but I'm just going to sit under a tree, or lays in a hammock, or go and look out to sea, and go and wild swim every day, and whatever we want to do, and just see what happens and what occurs, and stop trying to force it. Because if we don't force it, it gets really hard. Whereas if we think, let's just see, and nothing's come, that's okay, another day, and maybe that's important. Maybe you need to get the nothingness for something to come through. And I always remember a quote I read, goodness, this is 40 odd years ago, but it said, the space for what you want is filled with what you settle for instead. Because if you're so busy, you've not got thinking time. So you've just got to find that space in your life and in your brain, your mind, your head, just to allow nothingness to appear. And, and it might be, going off on a retreat would do it for somebody, but it doesn't have to be that. You could do it at home. Just, switch off all the phones and stop going on social media and things, and just allow things that crop up. And it might be, as somebody will say, actually, I just want to go and live in Italy for 6 months and just learn the language and just see what it's like. So try it, and if after 3 weeks you think I hate this, then come home, that's okay, or head to France or somewhere.
I think though that a lot of people find the prospect of that quite scary. They're not very good at tuning into what's going on inside them. Maybe they're a bit frightened of what they'll find if they stop.
Yeah, true. And I think that's why a lot of people keep going, because they don't want to allow the space in their head. And when I said earlier about vision quests, and I've got one I've got happening in my wood next week, and I think the chatter in people's head at the beginning, and I have to slow them down before they go out on their 4 days, or else they're spending the first 2 days just trying to slow down. So they slow down, and then they go into their 4 days and 4 nights. So I think if you're scared of it, that's normal. So it's normal to be unclear. But I don't just think I know that if you get so, I don't know what I'm going to do. Oh, look, there's that job. I'll go there and grab on it. It's like, just, clearly if you need the money, you've got to go and get the job. But sometimes it's worth just sitting back. So when people are younger, somebody say at 50, then thinking to their future is something that they're looking ahead. And clearly they're wondering about the numbers and how things are going to go money-wise. But then it's also just thinking about, what are some of the things I'd really like to do? What are the things that, and when I used to do the coaching, a lot of men would say, I wanted to do this. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be a teacher. But my father, always the father, said you need to be a lawyer or a doctor. You've got to have, or go into the city. So they end up doing work that gives them lots of money and no satisfaction. Well, clearly the people that came to me. So I think it's, what you can do is start thinking about options. And when I used to work in business, we used to do scenario planning. So you think about, this is how I think it's going to go. And this, if it all goes well, it goes really well. And this, if it all goes like, terribly. And so you can think about that to your future, because you think, well, do I want to go and sell up and buy a small holding in Wales? Maybe. So you then visualize how that might be, and then think about, but what if I did start up a business? How could that be? Or what if I just really just learned tennis and spent all my time playing tennis? So you can have all these different visions about how it could be. And then, as weeks go by, as years go by, each week or each year, you could have, let's just spend 2 weeks where I just pretend this is my life. I just play tennis every morning and swim every afternoon and read novels. And then after 2 weeks, you could think, you might think 2 weeks, that was all right. But you think, could this be conceivable if I did this month after month? Probably not. but then
it's interesting how many people are very reluctant to give that kind of thing a try, I think, and get kind of sucked back into the kind of achievement. I think that our culture can be so achievement obsessed that it becomes hard to switch that off. What exercises do you give in the book to help people do that?
Oh goodness, I can't remember. But I think the whole thing is about the pace that we're going through. The whole thing is about the pace that you're going through, and really the best. Sometimes when people go out with books, it's like, so what are your 3 key takeaways? It's like, I don't have 3 key takeaways with this, because it's you need to absorb it in its entirety. And it's not, it's a book you could read in a day if you just didn't do much else. It's not a huge book, and it's quite spacious in the way it's done. So I think it's more about, if you're not sure, well, this could well be one of the books that you want to have and to go through. I know through doing retirement coaching for a good number of years, so I was doing that for 10 or 15 years, that people just want to plan. So if you're doing the non-financial aspects, it's like, right, so what's my identity going to be? And let's think about health, and let's think about relationships, and let's think about work, and let's think about leisure, and let's think about spirituality. And you're sort of doing a wheel of life, really. That's what generally what's happening if you're looking at the non-financial aspects. But it's very process driven. Whereas I've stepped away from that now, because I think that actually could be a good start. When people are not sure, they can start thinking about, how's this going to go in my relationship? Because, often around retirement, relationships just fall apart because it's not quite worked out well, and starting thinking about my health. So that can be a really good start. But I think it's and now what? Okay, so, I play tennis twice a week. I go to the gym twice a week. I go for coffee with the girls twice a week. I cook nice meals at home for my husband, and I potter in the garden, and but then people go, but is that it? So then it's like, then we're back to thinking about connection and contribution. And I often talk in what I write about Carl Jung, because Carl Jung does say, when you get to midlife, basically what he's saying is, he's telling people, you really need to think about this one, because what got you here won't get you for the next half. And you need to think about all the disappointments you've had in life and come to terms with them. And I think that's really important, because, if you got to be a middle manager, but you always wanted to get into C-suite, or, your relationship never ended how you or it ended, it didn't carry on like you wanted it to be. There can be all sorts of disappointments that people might have. They never spoke to their parents about how they really felt about them, and it became too late. So we've got all of these things. So that's what's really, I think, when we start opening the conversation into, these are my disappointments and I need to let them go. And I don't include it in here, but I can share something that's really worth doing. And that is, when you have these disappointments, to sit with them, to actually think about what they are. And it can be really good if you spend a whole day, literally from dawn till dusk, just sitting with them, and a notebook and a pen, and clearly water and snacks, but nothing else. Take your watch off, take your phone, switch your phone off, and just sit with it and allow everything that you're thinking about that you regret or are disappointed in yourself, because there's nothing else to do and you're out in nature. then the next wave comes through and the next wave comes through, and you might want to do it a second day and a third day, because, you know, each time you do it, you go deeper and deeper. But I do think it's important.
That sounds very like the silent. That sounds very like the silent retreats that I go on, where you literally sit and you feel where you feel that feeling in your body, and you try and work out what's underneath it or where it really comes from. And often we find sometimes if we're quite angry about something, actually the trigger for that anger is sadness, or you know, that we can you can kind of go peel through your emotions a bit like an onion. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, so there's lots of ways of doing it, you know, and the silent retreat, at least you get, you know, you've got a bed and you're fed and all of that. So there's loads of different ways of doing things, and it's finding what works best for the individual. But I think it's also thinking about, what am I giving to the world and how am I helping the world? And it can be volunteering. So, you know, I volunteer at the Museum and Art Gallery in Cheltenham, and I get a lot of satisfaction just from being an invigilator, just sitting there amongst the paintings and talking to people and telling them answering whatever questions they might have. So you've got volunteering going. But I do think there's something about conversations. And I was in Barmouth on one of the days, and there's this big railway line and a path, and I started just talking to this man, and he was telling me all sorts of stuff about his partner dying, and about, you know, and about his life. And I could so easily have slipped into being a coach or counsellor. And it's like, that's not what I'm here. I'm here just as a presence, just to walk beside you. And I actually thought that was far better than me trying to get him to tell me more. And I think just being there to listen to people, a bit more like Samaritans do it than you know, as a counsellor. I think.
Well, it's a bit like the Noon Circle, where people come to be witnessed, to be heard. We're not there to fix them. Sometimes they're inspired by what other people say, but it's definitely not about kind of being fixed or having a counsellor.
Yeah, so I think it's, so for all of us, and I do think Noon Circles are really good, the way that they bring people together. And, you know, I love the one with Lucy in Cheltenham, and I love the way how you've got loads of them happening now. They're popping up everywhere. This is great. Everybody wants to be involved with one of them. So but we've got like multiple places that you can be doing this, and you know, but I think it's, for some people it's at a gentle level, and for other people, you know, I know somebody, and she's set up a charity and she's doing work with people in Africa, and, you know, so it's a big thing she's creating, but it's still a volunteer thing. She's not going to take any income out of it, and it's more about empowering women out in Africa. So yeah.
Oh, Denise, I want to thank you so much. You've been so moving and interesting on ThriveSpan, and I really recommend it to people. I'm going to have to go because I'm going to a concert just around the corner from where I am in Cadogan Square, but I'd like to recommend to everybody your wonderful book, ThriveSpan. Thank you so much for being with us, and I'm going to write about it also in my newsletter this weekend. So it's very noisy where I am, so I'm going to check out. But why don't you have a last word and tell everyone why they should buy the book?
Okay, all right then. Why should you buy a book? Because it's inspirational and it's gentle. And, you know, we've got Carl Honore, who wrote a quote on the front, and I've got Dr. Lucy Ryan and Aviva Wittenberg-Cox, who's written something on the back as well. It takes a gentle approach through to later life, and it says that there's no one way to do it. It's not prescriptive at all. It's just giving you suggestions. And if you go onto Amazon, and there's different reviews on the US version to the UK version, but what's lovely about the reviews is it's speaking to people where they are. And I've got some really nice detailed reviews, and everybody has got something slightly different from it. So I think, yeah, read it. And by the way, if you do read it, I have a page which is denisetaylor.co.uk/ThriveSpan. And if you sign up there, I've got 3 companion pieces that they were just for the launch week, but they can still be available. And one of them is sort of a bit like a guided reflection from the Wood. And another one is, oh goodness, I've forgotten what the 3 are. But one of them is a bit like this scenario planning thing I was saying about helping you to see 3 different things. And to be honest, I can't remember. Oh, I know what the third one is. The third one is to see your life through the life cycle of a tree. So in some bits of your life, you're a seed just growing. And, you know, in other bits, and basically, you know, in some bits of your life, it's dead wood. But that's not saying that you're dying. It's just that aspect of your life has come to an end. And so bits can be, you know, in all sorts of different areas. But then I only wrote that when I was at the wood. And I was in my hammock, and I was just thinking about how the trees go and why have all these brambles come back and different things. So this is why I get so inspired from my woodland. And it's called Bluebell Wood because it's an ancient woodland and there's loads of bluebells.
Oh, thank you so much, Denise. It's been really lovely to talk to you. And I think your book's really inspiring. I really recommend people to get it. And I think it's a great antidote to a lot of what's out there. So have a lovely evening. Thank you for joining us. Those of you who are there on LinkedIn. And see you at an evening soon. And thank you so much, Denise.
Enjoy your night. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.